concepts, though frequently used interchangeably, hold unique and essential places in the fabric of human interaction. They are the twin forces that shape our emotional intelligence, guiding our responses to these struggles and joys of those around us. Both sympathy and empathy arise from our fundamental ability to recognize and respond to the emotions of others. Both are manifestations of our capacity for care, for connection, and for the acknowledgement of another person's existence and experiences. Yet, as we begin to dissect these terms, we find that they diverge in meaningful ways. Sympathy, in its simplest form, is an acknowledgement of another's suffering, a recognition from a distance. It's the act of seeing pain and offering condolences, a statement of concern that says, I see that you're hurting and I feel sorry for you. Empathy, on the other hand, is the bridge that brings one closer. It's not just acknowledging another's pain, but stepping into it, attempting to feel it as they do, to inhabit their emotional reality, if only for a moment. Sympathy often stands as the more external of the two, an expression of compassion that maintains a certain separation between the one who suffers and the one who observes that suffering. In many ways, it's the first step toward kindness. When we offer words of condolence to a grieving friend, when we send a card to someone who suffered a loss, when we say, that must be so difficult for you, we're engaging in sympathy. There is care in this, certainly, but it doesn't require us to internalize another's emotions. We don't take their pain into our own hearts. Instead, we remain observers, offering comfort, but retaining our own emotional state. Empathy, by contrast, demands something deeper. It's not just an acknowledgement of another's pain. It's an attempt to feel it as they do. To be empathetic is to enter the emotional world of another, to set aside one's own perspective and try, however imperfectly, to perceive the world through someone else's eyes. When a friend is grieving, sympathy says, I'm so sorry for your loss. Empathy says, I can only imagine how painful this must be for you. I'm here to sit with you in this, to feel it with you. It's an act of emotional immersion, a willingness to embrace discomfort in order to truly understand another's experience. This difference, though subtle, has profound implications for how we connect with those around us. Sympathy, for all its kindness, often maintains a degree of emotional distance. It's the warm hand placed on a shoulder, that well-meaning word of wisdom that will acknowledge pain, but it's not like you're necessarily seeking to enter it. Empathy, however, requires vulnerability. sense that we lower our emotional barriers, that we allow ourselves to be affected by the pain of another, that we risk carrying some of their sorrow with us. It is, in many ways, a more challenging act because it requires us to momentarily set aside our own experiences and step fully into someone else's. This difference also plays out in how these two responses affect those who receive them. A sympathetic response can be comforting, but as you can imagine, it can also sometimes feel distant, even inadequate. A grieving person, for example, may appreciate expressions of sympathy, but still feel isolated in their pain, sensing that those around them acknowledge their suffering but don't truly understand it. Empathy, on the other hand, has the power to alleviate isolation. When someone feels truly understood, when they sense that another person is willing to feel their pain alongside them, the burden becomes lighter. It's the difference between standing outside in the rain and watching someone shiver from a dry doorway and stepping out into the storm to share the cold with them. There's also an interesting distinction in how sympathy and empathy shape our responses to each other's emotions. Now, sympathy often seeks to comfort, to offer solutions, to provide words or actions that might soothe the suffering of another. Empathy, however, is less about fixing and more about presence. When we're empathetic, we don't necessarily seek to solve another's problem. We seek to understand it, to validate their experience, to say, I'm here with you in this. This is why truly empathetic responses often require silence, deep listening, and the willingness to sit with discomfort. But despite these differences, sympathy and empathy aren't opposing forces. They exist along a spectrum of emotional engagement, each with its own value and its own place. Sympathy is often the starting point, the initial impulse of care that may lead to a deeper, more empathetic connection. Not every situation calls for deep empathy. Sometimes sympathy is the appropriate and necessary response. If we were to fully empathize with every hardship we encountered, to take on the suffering of others as if it were our own at every turn, we would risk emotional exhaustion, even burnout. There are times when a sympathetic response, a simple, I'm so sorry you're going through this, is enough. Empathy, though powerful, requires discernment. The ability to shift between sympathy and empathy is a skill, one that needs to be honed with awareness and intention. There are moments when stepping into another's emotional experience is the most compassionate thing we can do. And there are moments when maintaining some degree of separation allows us to provide steadier, more sustainable support. The key is understanding when each response is most helpful. A doctor, for example, needs to balance these forces carefully. Sympathy, allows them to care for patients with kindness, while too much empathy could overwhelm them, making it difficult to perform their duties effectively. A friend comforting another through heartbreak might choose empathy, stepping into their sadness, while a colleague responding to a coworker's bad day might feel that sympathy is the more appropriate approach. So, as we reflect on these two facets of human connection, we need to ask ourselves, how do we cultivate both sympathy and empathy in our lives? How do we ensure that our expressions of care aren't just performative, but genuinely meaningful? The answer, I think, lies in our willingness to be present with others in ways that align with their needs. It requires listening deeply, not just to words, but to emotions. It requires attuning ourselves to these subtle cues that tell us whether someone needs comfort from a distance or companionship in their suffering. At the heart of it all, both sympathy and empathy stem from the same fundamental truth, that we're meant to be connected, that no one is meant to navigate the trials of life alone. Whether through the gentle acknowledgement of sympathy or the profound immersion of empathy, our ability to recognize and respond to the emotions of others is what makes us truly human. And if we can master the balance between these two, knowing when to offer words and when to offer presence, when to acknowledge and when to feel, then we'll not only deepen our relationships, but also enrich our own experience of what it means to love and to be loved in return. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps others find the channel. Till next time.